Hello, idiots. This is your fearless leader here. You may have noticed I didn't welcome you with my normal jovial greeting, but so far this season, I feel like I'm playing with a bunch of amateurs. I mean, in your defense, this has been a pretty bizarre season. The Saints are 0-3, giving them the same record as the Browns. The Cardinals are 3-0. Let me repeat that. The Arizona Cardinals are 3-0.
3-0!
They haven't lost a game. A team that only has 3 players on its roster that are actually owned in our league.
3-0.
Also, surprisingly, the Colts won a game. I really didn't see that one coming. And who's their highest score? The player they sucked for all season? Andrew Luck. This isn't really that much of a surprise to me. Not because he's that good, it's just that the rest of the team is that bad. Having said that, we know that Luck is their highest scorer. Believe it or not, he's also the highest scoring player on his fantasy team. You heard that right. Andrew Luck is the leading scorer on Ben Kraft's travesty of a fantasy roster with 52 points. Oh, and did I mention? He's on the bench. Been there all season. So back to my original point. Hello, idiots. Now, the best fantasy football league of 2012 season hasn't been that much different from the NFL season. There are teams that shouldn't be winning games that are, and there are teams that should be winning games that aren't. For example, look at Revis and Butthead. He's put up the 4th most points in the league, but because of the points put up against him, he's 1-2. He has a ragtag group of nobodies that are scoring points, just like last season. But he keeps having to play tough competition. For example, me. Or look at some of these teams that keep winning. Take Jeffrey, for example. His starting lineup is pretty solid. I'll give him that. But that's it. He doesn't have a single wide receiver in his lineup in the top 25. I don't mean the top 25 players, I mean top 25 receivers. He has 7 players on his roster who have scored less than 25 points. Yet he has the 2nd most points and is ranked number 2 in the power rankings. And yeah, there are power rankings. I'm number 1. The Trendsetters, despite starting 2 Cowboys all season, despite having Mendenhall, 0 points, on the roster, and despite having a guy named Sean Drawn,
Who?
in his starting lineup, are 3-0. And I can't talk about any of this without mentioning the 2-1 GK. GK, what is that anyway? A fantasy team name or a cologne? Let's take a quick look at what George has done this season. Keep in mind, this is George Kraft we're talking about. You know, the same George who's never won more than 2 games in a single fantasy season in his career. So the stats shouldn't be all that surprising. It's the end results so far that have blown my mind. GK has 5 players on his roster who have scored less than 15 points, including one who has negative points on the season. Keep hanging on to that guy. He also has a starting tight end who has scored outside of the top 35 tight ends all season. Antonio Gates is the 37th highest scoring tight end this season, by a number that actually matches his age, I think. Keep hanging on to that guy too, George. GK1K. Yeah, I have faith that he will hit 1,000 points this season. Has scored in the 80s twice this year. And he's never scored more than 92 points in a single game. His average, 86 points a game. Here's a fun fact for you. Week 1, GK versus the Fruitcakes. A total combined score of a whopping 158 points. I outscored that whole game this past week. By myself. I'm actually starting to get a headache. Speaking of Ben, he and Steven, the undisputed champ, have each had a week with scores in the 70s. Pathetic. Now, I need to have a talk with a couple of our owners privately. Chris and Andy. So everyone else, just turn away or cover your ears or whatever you need to do for a couple minutes so I can have a word. Go ahead, I'll wait. Dustin. Thank you. Okay. What are you guys doing? 0-3, both of you? Seriously? You might as well change your names to We Sucky and Everyone Greater. You guys are embarrassing me. We are flesh and blood, and you're making me look bad. I know, Chris, we aren't technically blood, but I guess I'll tell you. Last Christmas, we were at your house. I accidentally cut my hand while I was carving Go Cats on the bottom of your kitchen table. Sorry. Anyway, I squeezed a little bit of blood in your Mountain Dew, and you drank it. So, now you do have some farmer blood in you, and that's 10 times better than tiger blood. You're welcome. Also explains that weird new obsession you've developed for cats over the last year.
Go Cats!
And that overwhelming desire to cheer for teams wearing blue.
Go Cats!
Again, you're welcome. Anyway, what is going on? Andy, I'm not too worried about your team. You have a bunch of good players that just seem to have forgotten that they're good. As soon as you guys start playing like they should, which will probably be this week, you'll be back in this race. As a matter of fact, I need to talk to you about a couple of trade offers I have in mind. I'd like to get my hands on some of your team before anyone else tries to. Now, Chris, every time I get online, Yahoo tells me, amazingly, Chris has not earned any medals. All I can think is, really? Amazingly? Look at his roster, Yahoo. Chris, here's a couple of tips. First off, why in the world do you have 3 Bears and 2 Colts on your roster? Not to mention the Colt and Bear that you had earlier this season but dropped. Only good move you've made so far. I mean, I like the Bears, obviously, and you, along with most of the rest of these rednecks, like the Colts, but there is no way I would have more than one from either of these teams on my roster, let alone 5. Trade away some of these losers, or just drop them. That wouldn't hurt. Since we're getting rid of players, I want you to pause this video, pull up your roster, and drop LeGarrette Blount, Justin Blackmon, and Randy Moss. Don't even worry about who's going to take their places, just drop them. I understand you don't have a lot of options with your current lineup. I mean, you're starting Jacob Tammy this week. But that reminds me, find somebody else. There are people on waivers in every position that are better than Tammy. Find one of them, start him, put him on the bench. You don't have to cut him, because I think he could be good, but not right now. Replace him immediately. Now, get back on waivers, pick up some players. Look at them. There may not be a lot of recognizable names left, but unlike your guys, these no-names are putting up points. Snatch them up. While you're there, pick up a quarterback. Do you realize your best quarterback is ranked 27th among QBs? Everyone in our league has 2. Well, except Hayden, he has 3, but he's dumb. That means there are 8 available quarterbacks better than your best one. There are 3 in the top 20, 2 in the top 15, and, oh yeah, 1 quarterback in the top 10 right now. Anyway, that's all I've got for you. Go, handle your business. Okay, everyone else can come back. Hello, come back. You here? Cool. Just had a little personal family stuff we had to take care of. Anyway, enough negativity for one day. I'm beating you losers down, and you'll probably feel like crying. As a matter of fact, I'd be willing to bet Hayden is. He's kind of a crybaby. It doesn't surprise me you guys feel this way, because really you are kind of a bunch of girls. Maybe I can do something to make you feel a little better. There is still hope for you guys if you hit the waiver wire. It's something you can strive to have. My team. Let's take a look at this squad, and I'll tell you what, if this doesn't brighten your day, nothing will. Now, as you all know, I don't like to brag, but I do own the best quarterback in the game. Robert Griffin III, RG3. Remember I drafted him over Romo? Maybe you guys don't remember, but y'all kept saying, I can't believe you took him over Romo. Well, now he's the highest scoring player. Period. I have 4 of the top 15 wide receivers, one of which I picked up off waivers this past week.
Idiots.
I have 3 top 20 running backs. One of those also came off of waivers and scored 21 points in his first game last week.
Idiots.
I have the 4th and 6th best tight ends, both of them off of waivers.
Idiots.
I win by an average of 40 points. I have the most total points. I've logged the most offensive and defensive points for a single week. And not that it matters, but I have the most medals as well. Now you're probably thinking, but Paul, all the good players are on your team. What can we possibly do? Well, since you're all lazy slobs who refuse to sit up and push a button, and because I am not only the best fantasy football league of 2012 champion, but also a helping hand to a brother in need, I did the work for you. Here's what you have to work with. 3 quarterbacks in the top 20 for their position, 7 in the top 25. If there's no great wide receivers out there, I have them all. But compared to what some of you have, there are 5 or 6 that are flex worthy. Running backs pretty much spoken for, but then again, there are several that are on that shouldn't be.
David Wilson, Beanie Wells, Toby Gerhart, Rashard Jennings, Felix Jones, LeGarrette Blunt, Noshawn Moreno.
There are 5 tight ends in the top 15 for this position. One of them, by the way, who's in the top 50 overall scores. So look, in conclusion, all I'm really trying to say is this. The championship trophy is mine this season. You're all playing for second place. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. When UK was in the national championship this past season,
Go Cats!
I was pretty sure we were going to win, but I was still a little nervous. When baseball season starts, I know the Cubs are not going to win the World Series, but every time we get a win, I can't help but think, or are we? But I tell you what, with this squad, I know I'm untouchable. There is not one team in this league that is even remotely comparable. The only time anyone might even get close is during the bye weeks, so you better pay attention. And when I see names like Hayden, Jeff, Dustin, and George as the potential playoff contenders, I get that much more confident. So hang on to your skirts, ladies. This season is going to be a fun ride. And when it's all over, you'll be able to say that you witnessed history as I compile the greatest fantasy football season of all time. Good luck, idiots.